This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Avoid the Maze. Now, typically, when I invite a guest on, um, I don't do any prep work because I want to be as much surprised as my listeners. Um, I used to do a lot of research and it'd be like, okay, well, I know everything and I didn't ask the right questions. But if I really don't know a lot, well, that's easier for my guest. And my guest is now, do you pronounce it Karen or Kareen?
Kareen.
Ah, see,
Yes.
so I thought I spelled it wrong too. My guest today is Kareen Aristide, and she's from Canada. And we were sort of talking about that because I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and people want to know if I'm from Canada because of my A sound, which I don't hear it. But
Interesting.
um, I met Kareen on podmatch.com. And when I read her bio, I thought, you know, we all go through life taking different paths, but sometimes um, we don't pay attention to the people around us, the path that they're taking. And sometimes it just like hits us smack in the face that, oh, this is something that I believe in too, but I didn't expect you to be taking this path. And the interesting part about life is we all have choices to make. Now, in some parts of the world, those choices are a little harder than they are here in the US and Canada, but there are choices. And so I'm going to start by asking you, Kareen, like, what got you to be this spokesperson to have a mission to share with not just us, but others that you are working with?
Yes. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me. This is such a privilege to talk about mission. I think when we talk mission, we talk life. That's the way I see it. And so I really grew up kind of knowing that I was meant for something greater. It's always kind of been there. And I didn't really know how it was gonna pan out, obviously. I grew up in a dysfunctional, I would say, family where um, we came from Haiti. I was born in Haiti. I was 9 months old when I came to Canada, and my parents, they did everything they could to really make sure that their children grew up in a place where they could have opportunity. And so my parents divorced. To make a long story short, my mother was very, I think that she probably suffered from some mental issues that was not really talked about in our culture. It's
Right.
not something we talk about. And so there were a lot of things that I went through in my childhood that made me see that, um, you know, without really understanding that there's a path there for me. And growing up, I always seemed to attract a lot of people that really people didn't want to be around because of possible mental issues as well. And so I felt drawn to really just be there, to be a listening ear, to so that they could feel understood and even loved. And so throughout my life, all of these things just came to be without me realizing that this was part of my mission. And to make a long story short, when I became an adult and I came across some very difficult situations, I fell into burnouts, fell into depression, and even was diagnosed with a with DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. And all of those things were part of me discovering the science of the soul even more and realizing that everything that I went through is to help others. It's not just for myself. A lot of people think that when you go through difficulties, when you have, or if you're diagnosed with a certain illness, especially in the mental realm, that it's for life and there's nothing you can do about it. And so, I'm a proof that that is not the case. And with the proper support, the proper tools, the proper outlook, really, and understanding your mission, you can definitely turn things around for the good. So that's really my story. That has become my mission. And I'm currently in the process of writing a book to really highlight the um, the marriage between personal development and mental health, and how having these tools can really help people really take care of their mental health in the proper way, according to who they are,
Right.
who they were born to be.
It's interesting as I'm listening to you. I think we all have some mental health issues.
Mm,
And there's nothing that we can really do about that
mm.
because, and I'm going to use your family, for instance, you came from Haiti, where weather conditions are a lot different than they are in Canada. Okay.
Absolutely.
So just the natural change in climates, how people live,
Mhm.
had to have been a shock, at least to your parent system, if
Absolutely.
not, to yours. Now you're living in Canada where there are more opportunities than there were in Haiti,
Yeah.
but it's still not easy
Mm.
if your neighbors think you're different
Yeah.
because, we all do that. Okay. Well, the person next door to me, she's really, really short and, she doesn't drive a car, and you start looking at these things. Oh, that person may be odd. Well, you know what? No, they are just as unique as you are.
That's it.
But we don't teach people that. Okay.
That's right.
And it's someone like you who's finally says, you know what? I've seen it all my life. And
Mm.
so I want to make people aware that the color of my skin, the way I wear my hair, the type of job I have, my house, my car, that doesn't identify who I am.
That's it.
And kudos to your parents for doing what they did. Because if
Yeah.
anybody has listened on the news recently, Haiti is not someplace where too many people want to live anymore. It's
That's right. Unfortunately. Yeah.
so you said that your mother had some mental health issues.
Mhm.
So did you actually were you able to identify that growing up yourself to say, hey, if my mom had more control, she wouldn't be doing these things?
Not as I was growing up. Definitely not.
Okay.
It's really when I came to understanding through my own lived experience, but also through then, finding a path in this field. I was able to identify some of the things that I was learning, and also some people that I was blessed to work with. I saw some similarities, and my mom passed away in 2018 of cancer. And it really hurt my heart to realize that she, all of her life, there were opportunities for her to really take some time to deal with her emotions, to see a therapist, to be able to truly thrive, instead of just surviving. And it was maybe a year before she passed away that she decided that she actually was open to getting some help. But unfortunately, the damage was already done. And that's what hurt me the most, is that it took too long,
Yep.
and that's one of the things that drives me, to make sure that, people understand that you can't do anything about tomorrow. The only thing you can do is to take care of the now, and to decide today to get the help that you need. And prevention is really what drives me most. Giving people tools and resources to be able to recognize, and then to be able to take the necessary steps, so they don't necessarily need to get to a place where it's too late,
You
right?
know, you know, there's so many things I'm finding interested in this conversation. My son, at the age of 6, um, they noticed some peculiar uh, things that he was doing in the classroom. So,
Mm.
the fire alarm went off. Instead of getting in line like he was supposed to, he would go underneath his desk and he would just shake.
Oh
It
no.
wasn't
Wow.
from the fear of the fire, it was the fire alarm, and he couldn't handle the noise.
Mm.
Um, they also noticed that when it was quiet time, um, he would sit. The only way that he could be quiet, he had to rock back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So he was brought in for some testing. Unbeknownst to us, we got called into the
Oh
school one
wow.
day and they said, "You need to see a doctor. Uh, we believe your child is autistic." Now, up
Mm.
until this day, he had friends, he was playing, everything was going along smoothly. So now that they've identified what they think, now they're treating him totally different,
Mm. Mm.
which was the wrong thing.
That's right.
He did get diagnosed being on the spectrum, but even the doctor back then said, you know, we don't want to feed the spectrum, so we want to keep him integrated. And
Yes.
but the school saw it otherwise, and so did neighbors and
Mm.
community. And so for the next 12 years of his life until he graduated high school, he had this stigma, you
Oh.
know, he's different. And even though people liked him,
Mm-hmm.
they were so also afraid of him because he could be picked on so easily.
Right.
Come full forward to today, he's 32 years old. He is living on his own. He's living 1,000 miles
Awesome.
away from us. He's
That must
doing
be tough.
he's doing a job that he loves, and not everybody can
Awesome.
say that. He's making
Exactly.
friends, and the difference is that because of the school system and the community, he fell into a bucket. So for those
That's
12
right.
years, it was horrible for all of us. And then we had to learn a new rhetoric to say, look at, you are capable,
That's it.
and yes, you may be a little bit more sensitive than me or your dad or the person next door. But you know what? It's okay.
That's it.
You know?
Absolutely.
So how do we get to a point, and I don't know if you really
Mhm.
have the answer for me, that when somebody has a diagnosis, whether it be
Yes.
cancer or a mental health issue, that we don't look at them and go, you know, I'm sorry you don't feel well, but
Hmm.
I don't know how to communicate with you.
That's right.
How do we learn how to communicate?
I love that. And wow, kudos to you for, making sure that your son understood that he was loved and that he was special. And, I like to talk about exceptionality when it comes to
Good.
neurodiversity,
Good.
because, you know, it's really not a mental issue at all. It's just a divergence, and it's just different. you know so, and also there's a difference between mental health and mental illness. So a lot of people interchange the two, right? So everything is kind of put all in a big bubble, and swallowed, right? So I think one of the most important things is, first of all, to demystify, which is part of my mission, because people are afraid of what they don't understand.
Right.
People decide to, create stigma because they don't embrace the difference, or they have the fear of the unknown. And all of those things can be dissipated simply by sharing the truth about something, number
Right.
one, and as well, and like you said in the beginning, we all have some sort of dysfunction somehow, and there's no such thing as perfection. And so the norm, that I would say, quote unquote, right, has been fabricated, to kind of keep
Absolutely.
people, in a certain status quo, right? So as soon as somebody kind of, steps out of that status quo, of that normality that we've created, this is where they can encounter, depending on the environment that they're in, they can encounter discrimination or stigma and things like that. And so, and I think it's starting to change, slowly but surely, because there's more openness, there's less taboo in certain subjects. We've entered in almost, in a place of epidemic, really, when it comes to certain things because of the pandemic. There was a lot of uncovering of certain things that might
Sure.
have been hidden, prior to this global phenomena that we went through. But that's the blessing that it gave. It gave the opportunity now to, highlight some of these things that before were kind of, okay, this that can never happen to me, or, this is not something that I understand or that I have experience with. So now it's being normalized more and more. And even the aspect of neurodiversity is also being normalized. More and more people are discovering that they have ADHD, for
Right.
example. Sometimes they self-diagnose in the wrong way, but that's okay. The goal is to make sure that, you know the stigma goes away, because it becomes a little bit more normalized, and more people are talking about it and embracing it.
Well, and I think that's where the internet
Yeah.
is playing a wonderful role.
Hmm.
That that information is out there.
Yeah.
Um, because before the internet, it was all done in whispers. Okay.
Hmm.
Nobody really knew, you know, what happens with certain illnesses.
That's right.
And we called things illnesses that really weren't.
Hmm.
Uh, I remember uh, I'm the third of three children. I have two older brothers, and um, I was the crybaby of the family.
Hmm.
And uh, I can sort of know why, because I hear I had these two older brothers. I wanted to be at their level.
Yeah.
Okay. One was 8 years older than me, the other one was 4 years older than me. So as soon as I got to that age of 8 or 9, those years were much different. Okay.
Yes.
Whereas when I was, a baby, it probably didn't make any difference. But I remember my mother taking me to a doctor, and she said, "I'm very worried about my daughter. She
Hmm.
just cries easily." And the doctor said, "Hmm, somebody hitting her? No. Somebody yelling at her? No." And I even said the same thing. "No, nobody's hitting me. No. Why do you cry?" "Well, if I see my brothers get an extra piece of cake, I cry. Karen, do you ask for that extra piece of cake? Oh, no.
Mm,
Because I was trying to be that good child.
yes.
Don't ask for anything, just take. And so the doctor looked at my mother and he said, she's ahead of her times with her brain, but she hasn't figured out how to put things together.
Mm,
And she thinks that you love her brothers more than you love her. And I remember sitting in his office, getting off my
mm,
chair, going over to him and giving him a big hug.
that's right.
And my mother looked at me because, according to her, I was her little princess. Every time she could sew me a new dress, she did. I mean, I had
Mm,
gorgeous clothes because of my mother. That was her way of telling me how special I was. But with my
yes,
brothers, she was giving them more hugs. She was giving them those little extra sweets. And as a kid, that's how you.
of course.
So I tell people that story for one main reason, and that is we have to teach our children it's okay to speak up.
That's it.
They don't have to use bad language. Uh, it's just communicating. And if we don't
That's it.
communicate with our children, we can't expect them to communicate with us.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
w- are you an only child or do you have brothers and sisters?
I have one brother, older brother.
An older
With
brother.
my mother, I have to say, remember I said I come from a dysfunctional
Right.
family. So I believe my father has over 10 children. I only know at least 6. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, at least you know 6.
That's
And, when we say dysfunctional,
Mhm.
we all look at that a little differently
Of course,
because,
absolutely.
um, you know, what makes it dysfunctional is that,
Mhm.
I mean, I've been divorced. Um, and in the beginning, I would say to people, my new life with my new husband and you know my child from my first husband is very dysfunctional. And they'd say,
Mhm.
explain that. I had no good way to explain it. I just felt, well, here I took him from that environment. I now brought him to this environment. That must not be very good.
Mm.
And luckily, I've been able to look back at that and say, that was wrong. I own it and I can change that dialogue.
That's it.
But there is no real norm. Your house is not going to look like your neighbor's house.
Of course. I think when I speak of dysfunction, I speak of the consequences of certain actions that actually impacts the functioning of someone, right?
Okay,
And
sure.
so for myself, the way that I describe the dysfunction is that when my father left when I was 7, and even though my mom never badmouthed him or never, made us resent him, but I still lived with this abandonment,
Sure.
this feeling of being abandoned by a father, which actually materialized in my relationship with men afterwards, right? And so that little girl, that didn't grow up with a father, it took her a long time
Sure. I
to
understand
actually
that.
heal from that, and to understand, and for myself, what helped was, my relationship with God. This is what helped me. And so, having this understanding of the love of the Father, and being able to then heal, from all of that, made a huge difference. And it took a good 25 years. And so I don't think it has to be this way, you know? And so I think that a functional family, even if there's divorce, it doesn't matter. like, of course, divorce actually impacts, but when the parents decide to be adults about it, okay, our relationship didn't work out,
Right.
but we have these beautiful children together. And so let's decide to co-parent them in a way that will actually impact them in a good way, right?
Right.
But in my case, my father was, very dysfunctional himself. So I don't think he would have the capacity. He didn't have the capacity to
Sure.
co-parent properly. But I think this is what I mean when I talk about dysfunction is what is the result of the family dynamic, right? In the children, but also in the parents as well.
Well, and it may have taken 25 years, but you were working on it in
Yes,
some way over those 25 years. And it's never too late to start working on something that
absolutely.
just isn't right for you, like your
Yeah.
mother. Okay. Sadly, it was a year before she passed away, but something triggered her, whether it be the
Yes,
cancer or whatever, where she said, it doesn't have to be this way.
exactly.
And recognizing it is the first step.
Yes.
Um, I have shared many times that I was brought up being told that make somebody else happy and you're going to be happy. So
Mm,
mom and dad happy, make your brothers happy, whatever.
yeah.
Um, and I did this all through my adult life till I hit about 50 or 55.
Mm,
And one morning I just woke up and I said, this isn't working for
that's
me.
it.
I work so hard at, oh, I hear somebody needs a meal. I go out and I buy the best ingredients. I make it for them. And then I come home and eat a peanut butter sandwich. Um,
Mm,
and it was like, there's got to be a give and take.
yes.
Um, and so my youngest son at the time realized that I was going through, he didn't know what it was, but he saw I was
Mm-hmm.
going through a lot of confusion. I was working long hours. Um, and I was sitting at my desk at work crying. He saw that and he'd say, why are you crying? And I had no idea. Um, and then the more we talked, it was like, when is somebody going to make me feel good?
Mm,
And he said, Mom, I'm going to tell you what you've been telling me for the last 21 years. Don't depend on anybody else to make you feel
that's
good.
it.
And I kept saying, but if, you know, I make you feel good, I make your dad feel good. And I just gave him this list. He said, when are you ever happy when you're doing that?
Mm,
And that was the key.
that's
And
it.
I had to figure it out. What was I doing? Was I so busy trying to make this perfect world around me?
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, I was I was fading away.
That's it.
That's when I sat down, I started blogging, I started thinking about, you know what? I need to feel better. So I'm now going to pour my heart out to whoever will listen.
That's
Wasn't
it.
asking for sympathy, and I made sure people knew that. I just wanted to hear if anybody else felt the
Yes.
same way. And listening to your story, it may not have been exactly the same, but we're both living with thoughts in our head that were making us dysfunctional
That's
because
right.
of what we experienced.
Absolutely. And a lot of us, go through these things. And, I love the fact that, you took charge and you made the decisions that were right for you to choose yourself and to start living from the inside out, and that's also part of my mission, to make sure that people understand that choosing yourself is not selfish, right? And especially and I think you will relate to that. I I say that I'm a recovering superwoman syndrome and savior complex, but just like any addict, you always have to be careful not to go back, right?
Right.
And so the idea, is to know, yourself, to really truly know yourself, and that requires effort. It requires time. It requires, shutting out everything. And I talk about, learning to be before you do. And so a lot of people are going around, being human doings. And a lot of people are plagiarizing as well because they are living a life that is not really corresponding to who they truly are.
Exactly.
So just living according to what others, have said they are, or what when they grew up, how their parents kind of shaped their past. And so, yeah, it happens, around, and it's beautiful when it happens, at whatever age that it happens, to
Absolutely.
have that aha moment and that, realization that, hey, you know what? I need to start being happy, and I need to start, you know, having the life that I know that I'm meant to have, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I really love that.
And, when we say that we're happy, happiness is not a 24-hour,
That's right.
emotion that we go through. The same
Mm-hmm.
thing, even with sadness and grief. Okay.
Yeah,
There are those moments that we do
absolutely.
laugh, that we uh, maybe are numb, but we don't carry an emotion the same way for 24 hours.
Yeah.
And that was the first thing that I started to learn on my own when I realized I needed to change.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a cold, snowy day in December. No, actually, it
Mm.
was February. And I was sitting in my bedroom. I had just, made the bed, put my husband's clothes away, opened up the shades, and I saw all this snow outside. And it was like, to me, it was depressing. It was dark clouds and everything. And I thought, I'm not going to make it through this winter.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, it was like, wait a second. If I don't make it through this winter, what does that mean?
Mm.
So I went back to the window, looked outside at the snow, which I'm not a snow person. I'm not a cold person. And I looked outside and I looked up at the sky, which was gray. And I said to myself, the sun is on the other side of those clouds.
Mm. That's
So
it.
I'm going to break through those clouds. It may not be today, but if I don't start today, I'll never get there.
That's it.
And you know what? For some of us, it happens faster than others.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that there are people like yourself out there who are saying, I went on a journey too,
Mm-hmm.
and I made it to the other side.
That's it.
But you have to keep being mindful of where you are all the time.
Yes. Yes. Checking in with yourself, I call it. A lot of the
Absolutely.
times, we can get caught up in the busy, and there's so many things we can do, so many activities, and thinking that this is what we ought to do. And I sometimes I tell my clients, I say, just because you're capable of doing something doesn't mean that you should do it. And so there's this thing sometimes that drives us to do things to maybe feel validated or feel loved or prove something to someone. And it's hard to get at those why you do what you do. And
Exactly.
and so, I talk about having me time, and this is not about watching Netflix or going to the spa. But it's really about spending time being in touch with your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings. Sometimes journaling is a great way. Some people don't like writing. It could be putting a chair in front of you and just talking, or even recording yourself, as you're going through certain things, giving your emotions and feelings room to express themselves. Because if you don't do that, then that's when it turns into psychosomatic symptoms where, you have this ache and pain somewhere and you don't know where that's coming from. Well, very often it's pent up emotions that didn't get a chance to get out. And sometimes if you don't want to do like verbal diarrhea on people, because that can be harmful,
You're right.
then that's why I say take a chair, put it in front of you, and just get it out. That's the most important thing. Get it out. I talk about scooping the crap too.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You know, last week, I was with my husband up in Michigan. He had a 4-day assignment, and I thought, well, I'll go up with you and I'll get together with some family members and friends while you're working. And we got up there, and things didn't fall into place the first day the way I had thought. Now, in the past, that would have upset me. Okay. It would have been
Mm,
like, we were supposed to be at the hotel by this time, and then I was going to get together with this person. But it was like, okay, well, it didn't happen. I have a choice. I can get
that's right.
frustrated. I can get mad at him, although he had nothing to do with it. Um, or I could just go along for the ride. And
Mm-hmm.
that day I said to him, because he had no time to even get me to the hotel, I said, so I'll go to work with you. No big deal.
Mm,
And the type of work that he does, he's an IT professional, and I have an IT background, so he takes me in and he actually puts me to work, which is
there
fine.
you go.
Um, but I looked at it as, okay, this is an experience because I've never done this exactly. So you're going to tell me how to do it, and I'm going to learn. Um, and then the next day came along, and we were supposed to have the whole day to ourselves, and something else came up, and I started to get frustrated. And then
Mm,
so I can yell at my husband if I want, but again, it's not his fault.
that's right.
I can get mad at myself,
Mm,
but I had nothing to do with this
there
situation.
you go.
So I said to him, we need to talk about how we're going to get through this. And he said, okay, you go first. And
Gentlemen.
we figured it out. We got through the day mostly laughing. And so did my week
Good.
go the way I wanted it to initially? No. But it worked out
That's
because
it.
I chose not to get wrapped up in the frustration and anger. The
Mm-hmm.
same way, it's beautiful now, it's April the 4th, but I do know that Cleveland, Ohio will get one more large snowfall before it's over. And on that day, I'm just going to have to go, okay, it's just
Yep,
another day.
that's right. Absolutely. To be stewards of our emotions and feelings so that, our internal environment is what we want it to be.
Exactly. So, how can my listeners find you and get to know you better?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much on all socials. So if you go to kareenaristide.ca, you will have all my socials. You will have the YouTube channel with my personal story, well, my entrepreneurial journey, I should say. And also my book. I wrote a book called Dare to Rise, Transformational Reflections to Know Your Vision. And so it's 21 days of just, if you're just starting with personal development, it's a great way to get initiated. If you've been on the journey, such as yourself, for a while, you'll still find some good nuggets in there. So, yeah.
Well, you have been a delight.
Oh, thank
I'm so glad
you.
that you
So
could
have
join
you.
us from Canada.
Yes.
It is And for any of you who have never been to Canada, I have to tell you,
Hmm.
um, I think you have the nicest, friendliest people living
Oh.
in your country. Um,
Thank you.
you know, like I said, as a young child, we used to go to Windsor all the time.
Yes.
And um, I just remember people just, oh, you're from America. Yeah, across the river there, you know. Um, but we were treated with such kindness.
That's
And
awesome.
sometimes you don't see that in every
Mm,
community. So
so true.
thank you so much for that. Have a great
Yes.
day and
Yes,
keep in
you
touch with us,
too.
okay?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you. Bye bye
Okay,
now.
bye-bye.